No? Okay, you guys know that the mini exam, quiz, whatever you want to call it, did open today. I did make a note of what content's going to be included on that mini exam. So please make sure to have that completed at your own time this week. Okay. Any questions about that?
It's 30 again, right?
I think it's 30 questions for 30 minutes. There was a little more content. And what we talk about today, the marketing program, was originally on the mini exam, but I pulled it since obviously we're a little behind. But I'm convinced we'll catch up. I did trim a couple things. As you've probably noticed, as you've read the textbook, you've probably noticed that I add things to the content or the chapter that's not in the textbook. And so I had to trim some other content, but I'm confident we'll get back up to speed shortly. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And so what we talk about today will be on the next mini exam. So today we're going to be talking about the marketing program. So again, we're going to be talking about our 4 Ps and how we want to create a holistic program so that all 4 marketing elements are aligned. So specifically in talking about this, again, we're talking about a company's product portfolio, its pricing strategies, its distribution strategies, and its integrated marketing communications, sometimes referred to as IMC. And you want all of these to be integrated like a puzzle. They need to make sense because what would happen, for instance, if you see a Kate Spade, say you're out and about shopping, maybe in Amsterdam. I don't know that anything about Amsterdam. Like I said, I haven't been there, but you guys who have all been there now can say that you have. But let's say you're out shopping in Amsterdam and you see, what kind of purse do we want to find? Let's say we find a Louis Vuitton purse and it's $25. What do you think? Okay, she says it's a fake.
Or something's wrong with it.
Something's wrong with it, it's defective, right? So the pricing and the product doesn't make sense. Or let's say you're at shopping here in Auburn, or technically, well, we do have a Target now in Auburn, down at on College Street, but they don't sell purses, I don't think there. So let's say you're at the Target and you're in Opelika, and you see a Kate Spade purse for sale at the Opelika Target. What do you think? You question it? You don't question it? See, I would question it, but why don't you question it?
Target's reputable.
Okay, Target's more reputable. So to me, I would still think it doesn't seem to make sense to have a Kate Spade purse there, or in the prior example, a Louis Vuitton piece there. But the idea is simply that your products and their price point, where they're sold, and certainly the promotional strategies behind that all need to make sense. Okay, because consumers' interpretations are impactful. Okay, when we have good, I call them BS alarms, but we can see through some marketing tactics. And so we need to make sure everything's aligned, because sometimes when we see misalignment in a firm's marketing program or its 4 Ps, that kind of triggers a consumer's BS alarm to go off. Okay. Okay. Let's simply talk about products. We're going to be talking about each of these 4 Ps in a little bit more detail. And so when we're talking about a product, we're talking about the offering that a consumer purchases to satisfy a need or a want. And so products can have tangible components like we talked about. They can have intangible components like a service, Or they might even have symbolic components too. Like, what does it mean to be a person who has an Apple phone? Okay? And so products have a lot of different benefits. And when we're thinking about products, marketers are going to be concerned about the core product itself. What are the benefits that consumers are going to reap through purchasing it? Okay? And later on, as they think about designing products, they're thinking about branding, they're thinking about positioning. How is that product going to be perceived in the minds of the consumers? But ultimately, when you think about products, the very first step is thinking about its design and how it's going to satisfy certain needs and wants. I'll never forget, did you guys ever watch Shark Tank? Okay, I watch it occasionally, not as much as I used to. I used to watch it a long time ago. But a contestant got on the show and he started talking about building the brand and its branding strategy and whatnot. And Mark Cuban, do you guys know who Mark Cuban is? Okay, right. So Mark Cuban immediately stopped him and said, wait, we need to focus on the core product and getting the design right of the product first before you go about building a brand. And that kind of shocked the contestant. And anyhow, but I think it goes to illustrate you have to get the core product right first. Okay, so important because a lot of new products fail. And so making sure that there is a need that can be addressed with your product is very important. When we talk about products, we can talk about consumer products versus business products. Again, consumer products are those that we as end consumers use and buy. Business products are those that organizations buy. They might buy them to be used in their daily operations. They might buy them to resell, like if you think about retailers who buy finished goods and resell them. They might buy products to be used in the manufacture of goods and services, and so forth. So business products are a little different than consumer products because they're purchased for business reasons. Now let's talk about some other terms that are important when we talk about product strategies. One term that's important is talking about a product line. A product line for an organization consists of a group of very closely related products. And there are many different ways. I could give you a bunch of different examples, but I'll think of Oreo for right now. Okay, if you think about the brand Oreo, now technically Oreo is owned by Mondelez, and Mondelez owns a bunch of consumer brands. So they own, like, for instance, Wheat Thins, Ritz Crackers, Nutter Butter, I think Trident Gum, a lot of different brands. But let's just narrow this down to say we're going to focus on Oreo. So, because the reason I'm saying Oreo is someone I work with today, we were talking about how people eat Oreos. Okay, they don't necessarily just take a bite out of it. So anyhow, with that said, if we're talking about Oreo, Oreo has its, let's just call it the original cookie line, right? And you can think of all of the different cookies here, okay? So they have what? They have double stuff, they have original, they have what? A mint, golden. Sorry, my writing is terrible. What other ones come to mind?
Mega stuff.
Mega stuff? I don't know that I've ever had that. That sounds good. So how is mega stuff different than double
I
stuff?
think it's double the double stuff.
Yeah, so it's 4 times.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh. Okay, so you can think of, and what other ones do they have? They have lots of different flavors, So all of their cookie lines here. Then they have like their snack mini lines, right? So like their 100 calorie pack, oh, that's, why did I do 100%? 100 calorie pack. They have their snack pack, so forth, okay? And then they have a frozen, where they have, do they have ice cream? I think they have ice cream. They might even have bars. I'm trying to remember all what I've seen at the grocery store lately, and so forth. And they might even have more lines here. But as you can see, all of these products right here within a line, they're very, very similar, right? Like they're filling, for a large part, similar needs. They have similar ingredients and so forth. Another way to think about this too is with auto manufacturers. How if you think about different product lines, so for instance, if you have like Toyota, they have the Highlander, and then within the Highlander, they have like a limited edition. They have a hybrid edition. What are the other editions they have? You have a Toyota expert in here? But do you guys follow what I'm saying? So like if you were Ford, you have the XLT, the Ford, what is it, King Ranch, you have Platinum, you have all those different ones, right? Okay. And so ultimately within there, there's a lot of similarities, okay, within a product line. Now, the total products that are across all of what a company might offer, so across all of the product lines that a firm carries, that's considered their product mix or product portfolio. Okay, so all products fall under a product portfolio. Now, when we think about product lines, though, we should talk about width and depth. So usually when you think about, we'll do width first, okay? I know some of you are really focused on risk management, and I love that. So why do firms want to potentially have greater width in their product portfolio? Mm-hmm.
One market crashes, they still have other products that work.
Yes. So if one thing were to fail, right, or something goes wrong, hopefully those other lines will keep it afloat. So it helps diversify the company, and it's a way to mitigate risk. And so like Mondelez, if you look about like, oh, if something were to happen with Oreo, well, hopefully Ritz crackers and Wheat Thins and all the other brands, like some of these other brands where they have where they operate in these different categories, will keep that company kind of afloat and not as wavy in terms of performance. Now, depth, or I should say width, refers to the number of different product lines, how wide of an array is their total product portfolio, where depth looks at the number of products within a line. And so why companies oftentimes use or a deeper assortment is because they feel like they can attract a different market or attract a different customer, or meet other customers' needs that help them expand their performance. So for example, maybe people who are, if Oreo were to add like a gluten-free, do you know if Oreo has a gluten-free?
Yes.
They do? Oh, well, shoot, that.
I think Oreos are default gluten-free.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
That's not
Okay.
true. No.
No?
I thought I think I heard that from some, I thought that was.
Maybe we all need to go buy a pack of Oreos and look at the ingredients list.
Vegan.
Vegan, but
I
not-
was like, I think there was something special about them, just in general.
So for instance, like, let's say Oreo were to add a gluten-free one, or maybe they already have it, or maybe, protein right now is all the talk, right? So so if they had a gluten-free or a high-protein cookie, like add to that, you can probably see how that might bring in some new customers purchasing Oreos who would not traditionally purchase Oreos. And there's a lot of economies of scale here too, right? Like that, because there's some similarity or some overlap, you can get economies of scale both in branding, taking the Oreo brand and putting it on all of these different products, because when people hear Oreo, they automatically have some inferences about the quality or the taste or what their expectations are of the product. And so Oreo can benefit from that by slapping their name on these different products. So there's a lot of economies of scale that can come from having a deep assortment. Now, one other thing I should mention that I don't have on here is a brand extension. So a brand extension is a little different than a product line extension. So a product line extension is simply adding, forget this thing with this touch sensitive. So a product line extension is simply adding an item to its existing product line. A brand extension is when you take your brand, like let's say this is Oreo, and you are now offering a product that's in a new product category. So if, for instance, Oreo, I don't even know if they have cereal, but let's say that they started manufacturing an Oreo cereal. That might go, that would be a new product line, that would be a brand extension. Or if Oreo started making Oreo t-shirts, okay, that would be a brand extension. And so it's when you're taking your brand and you're extending it to a new product category. And again, why companies might do that is because you reap the benefits of having these certain perceptions customers have of your existing brand and extending them to a new product category. And so when customers see your brand, they automatically bring with them, oh, it must be good, or, you know, customers have these inferences that they expect of this new product in its new line. So there is a difference between product line extensions and brand extensions. And also something marketers need to also consider too is deletions. Like we talked about with Tab, Coca-Cola, not too long ago, deleted Tab, because at some point you need to think about if you're obviously as a marketer, you're looking at your numbers. And if your product isn't selling and you're not profitable, at some point, I mean, you are gonna have to cut it, okay? So deletions do happen. And interestingly, I would say with COVID, we have seen a lot of deletions of products. I don't know if you've noticed that, but a lot of fast food restaurants have trimmed their menus because they realized, like, okay, not as profitable, we don't sell enough of these. And also, certain companies, for instance, have reduced different fabric options and different, like, varieties of candles and different fabrics and things of that sort. And largely, I guess there's probably some supply chain issues that stimulated that. But also, again, the ROI was just not there. So deletions are largely considered by marketers as well. Let's talk a little bit about service products. So again, service products are those products that you can't necessarily take home with you. So it could be things like you going out to eat. It could be you getting your hair cut. It could be going to the doctor. Right now it's tax season, so maybe you work with a tax consultant, or maybe you have an attorney that helps you maybe in creating a will or whatever. So all of those are examples of service products. And service products have some challenges with them, okay? One is that because they're intangible, they're oftentimes difficult for consumers to evaluate their quality. So, for instance, why would you go to an attorney and create a will versus do it yourself?
Expertise.
Expertise, right? You trust that they're doing it right? You trust that your doctor is running the right sort of tests on you if you're sick. And there's many different service providers that come to mind. Like I think about real estate too. You trust that if you're moving to a new town and you're not familiar with the area, you trust that your realtor is telling you the truth. So because they're difficult to evaluate on quality, as a marketer of services, you really need to instill trust in your customers. It's very, very important to establish trust with your clients or your customers because, again, they're difficult for customers to evaluate the quality. And if they learn that something was wrong, that could really backfire on the marketer. Another issue with them, too, is that there's simultaneously, or you at the same time produce and consume the product, okay? That customers are present during service delivery, okay? They need to be present. And this can become challenging, particularly for marketers, because if you think about, for instance, scheduling. Have you ever worked in a restaurant here? Some of you, okay, right? It can be really hard sometimes to predict demand and to be able to predict the amount of staff or hostesses or servers you need to have on a given night because sometimes demand is unpredictable. And I think sometimes, does anybody here work at Mellow Mushroom? No? Do you guys go to Mellow Mushroom? Some say yes, some say no. Okay. See, I wondered if at lunch, they have those single slice pizzas. They don't offer that at dinner time, right? No? Well, this kind of gets into the next one, is perishability. Those single slices, they only cook so many of them, right? Because they can't really inventory the cold pizza there. Same thing like with, is it Irritable Bowel? Do you guys go there? Right? They only have so many, right? Is it still the approach there? They only cook so much and then they're done for the day? That was their approach when they first opened. Do they still do that? You guys don't go there enough? No? Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And then they used to have a line. I don't venture that way for lunch anymore. I work until 12:30, and then next thing you know, I've got a 1 o'clock meeting. But anyhow, so perishability related to simultaneous production and consumption is this perishability aspect, is that service providers, you can't really get back, in this case, what you cooked, right? Like you have to sell it, you have to use it. But this also applies to, think about airlines, right? So sometimes it's hard to predict demand. And so, and once a flight's going, it's going, right? Like, so you want to fill those seats. And so yield management and pricing is very important oftentimes here in that you want to fill those seats. And so you're going to think about pricing. How can I price this so that it's hopefully going to have a full aircraft or a nearly full aircraft? And if it's not by a certain point, what sort of price point do I need to offer so that we can have, more customers on that aircraft? Another issue is heterogeneity. Service quality will greatly vary across people. Like who cuts your hair might have a dramatic impact on whether or not you like your cut. Your experience at Mellow Mushroom or any restaurant is likely largely going to be a function of your server, whether or not your server was good at his or her job, right? How attentive they were. Did they listen to your requests? So service quality is largely going to be variable. And so that's a big deal too in managing services. And lastly, client relationships are very critical. Generating repeat business is very crucial. I mean, I think about your accountants, your doctors, your attorneys, all of them are essentially engaging in marketing. And they need to have long-term relationships with their clients often to continue to sustain their business. We also should talk a little bit about developing new products. So companies that don't adapt and modify their products over time oftentimes become obsolete, right? Creating products that are new or adapted is critical to the long-run survival of a firm. As we've talked about in this class, customer needs are constantly changing. The world around us is changing, and so as marketers, we need to adapt. Your book talks about different types of innovations and categorizes them, I think, in these different categories here. So one is the new to the world type products or disruptive innovations. These carry a lot of risk for the marketer, right? Because they're brand new type products. Think SpaceX here, folks, okay? Something that's entirely new, something different, but also very risky. Okay? It's like cell phones when they were first created. New product line, so we talked about that already. It's where you create a new, like if I said Oreo were to branch out into the cereal business, okay? Now, that's not as risky, right? Because it's related enough, I would say, to their current product portfolio. New product line extensions, so adding products to your existing lines have much lower risk, right? Because you know that product category very well, and you likely can achieve some sort of economies of scale or lower costs in adding to your current product line. You also might have simply improvements or revisions in existing products. You see this a lot. This is very common and the least costly of all of these, right? Most of the time. And so how you might be modifying, I think Gordon talked about modifying cat food, modifying certain cleaners. If you ever look at some of your bottles for different cleaning solutions that you might have in your home, it might say new and improved formula on it, okay? So if you're not adapting your products, modifying them, your competitor probably is, and you're probably losing to your competitor. So very, very big deal here, folks. And lastly, repositioning. Repositioning deals with changing how consumers view your brand and is largely due to tap a new market segment or a different group of consumers. And I'm going to share with you some examples of Buick. Does anyone in here drive a Buick or willing to admit that they drive a Buick? Like, I think Buick's a decent brand. My dad just bought one. So I think Buick, for the longest time, was known as a vehicle that was driven by who?
Elderly.
Okay, he says elderly. Okay? Now, my dad fits that. Okay? And he's in his 80s. He's driving the Buick. He loves it. Okay? But Buick has invested so much into trying to be perceived as more sporty and a younger person's vehicle. And the average age of a Buick owner has dropped significantly in the last 10 years since they started this campaign. So Buick has these commercials You can see, hopefully they work. Oh, these work.
I may have retired from the game, but not from being big. Good thing one car gives me full-size luxury and 36 miles per gallon, which is nice because I've got shoes that are bigger than most hybrids. And more stylish, too. If you don't know the luxurious yet fuel-efficient LaCrosse, you don't know Buick.
Get 2 years of premium services with nothing due at lease.
You guys seen that commercial before? Okay, yeah. And then I'll show you a couple others. And they had other ones too besides the ones that I'm showing today.
You know why I like this new Verano? It lets me audible.
OnStar, how can I help you?
Check. I-287, Orange Barrel. Reroute.
Sending new route now, Mr. Manning.
Phone call. Papa Bear. Hut.
Hey, Peyton, where are you?
Trips. Alert. Hot Route 2.
Where?
Blue Tune. XM 60. Outlaw. If you don't know the innovative new Verano, then you don't know Buick.
And then here's another one. She's a supermodel, not an athlete.
My Buick Enclave is filled with innovations that make it incredibly intelligent, like smart slide seating and a power liftgate. But all people seem to remember is how good it looks. I can relate. If you don't know the smart and sexy Enclave, you don't know Buick.
Introducing the Experience Buick Lease. Get 2 years of premium services.
And then they also had commercials like with younger couples getting married. And can anyone else remember other ones? No? Okay. But ultimately, I think this example shows is one, consumer perceptions can be really hard to change. Okay? Very, very difficult. And it's going to take time to change consumers' view of your brand. But I do think that this is an example of a company that, again, they've had these long run perceptions, but they have slowly changed over time. And it's been a huge investment for the firm. And I would say largely it has been successful with more and more younger people actually starting to choose Buick. So that's what repositioning is all about. So it's changing how consumers perceive your brand. And your book classifies it, as developing new products, but it's really changing perceptions. Cost reductions too are also important and fall under product development as well. So largely recession strategies are oftentimes to eliminate or reduce the most expensive components to manufacturing products. Would fall under this category here too. So for example, one of the most expensive items in manufacturing chocolate is like cocoa, or I think it's technically called cacao. Any chocolate experts in here? Okay. And so they oftentimes will reduce the actual percentage of that ingredient in the chocolate items, okay, when it goes to a recession strategy here. Also, sometimes you might think of downsizing. Downsizing is when a company essentially reduces the amount sold to consumers, but keeps the price point the same. So they might reduce the ounces or the number of chips that are in the package, but ultimately keep the price point the same. And so if you're familiar with Bluebell, do you guys know Bluebell, the ice cream? If you've ever listened to their little jingle, it says that we're still the half gallon. And if you look at Bluebell's label, next time you go to the grocery store, look at the ice cream aisle. They have a little red ribbon on the front and it says still a half gallon. And why they do that is because many ice cream manufacturers have engaged in downsizing over the years, in which they have reduced the amount of ice cream sold to consumers while maintaining the price, or if not even raising the price. And so Bluebell prides themselves on not engaging in downsizing for that sort of cost reduction approach. Okay, so products encompass a lot. And while we're talking about products and all of what they, include. Again, a lot more, if you go back to some of the earlier chapters, I think I had a table that said under products, you're also talking about, not just benefits, but what's the warranty, the components, all of those items fall under product management too. And also branding, but we're gonna talk about that with the next slide deck as well. So products constitute a lot, but they're, you gotta figure out the product first before you start to move into these other categories. That said, you are kind of looking at these 4 Ps simultaneously because, for instance, when you're engaging in product development and you're thinking about the different features that you're gonna have with your product, the cost of the features is going to also influence your total cost of manufacturing the product and what you're gonna want to sell it for. Okay, so sometimes you're gonna be largely thinking about, for instance, product and pricing simultaneously, and also distribution and promotion. When we talk about pricing, there's many different issues that marketers are going to be considering. First and foremost, they're gonna look at break even, okay? At how many, when we look at the total cost of manufacturing a given product, how many units are we gonna have to sell to break even? I'm not gonna make you calculate a break even price in units or in price in units sold or in just understanding the break even price. I'm not gonna, you probably have done that in accounting classes. I'm just gonna assume that that's done. But marketers are gonna look at it. They're gonna figure out, okay, how many do we need to sell to break even? And at what selling price do we need to have to break even? These are important. Because marketers don't just want to break even, right? We need to make a profit, okay? And so the marketers need to consider, is it even feasible that we can sell a product at this break-even price? If not, we need to reconsider our product design and eliminate certain features, okay? But then you question, if you eliminate those features, is our product even valued by the market? Is there even going to be demand? Okay, so this is very, very important. So besides considering break even, okay, marketers are going to be looking at, sometimes they look at this, basing their products price on what's the cost to make it plus a simple markup, okay? And the markup largely varies on the category. So for instance, some companies like builders, anybody here work for a builder in town? Or maybe their parents built a home or someone built a home. It used to be, for instance, a lot of builders would engage in what's called cost plus pricing. Is anybody familiar with cost plus pricing? Okay, it's simply like, what is the cost? So think about that as break even. What is the cost plus a given markup? Okay, so I would say in Auburn, cost plus pricing is probably 20%. So if you build a home, the builder's gonna say, hey, here's the cost and the 20% builder's fee. So that's the total cost of building the home, cost plus. Some other industries are different or more, like for instance in jewelry, the cost, I don't know, if someone could Google this, it might have changed, but at one point it was like 400%. So the retailer's markup on the jewelry was 400% of what they bought it for. They bought it from the wholesaler and then marked it up, okay? Some boutiques oftentimes just do 100% markup, okay? So they double the price that they purchased, and that's very common for boutiques to do that. And that's oftentimes why you'll see the mass it's very rare, I should say, for boutiques to discount their products greater than 50%. But so that's what cost plus is, okay? But marketers need to not just think about break even. They need to think and what these different kind of, what their take home pay essentially is gonna be. They're also gonna be thinking about what is the demand for this type of product? What are consumer perceptions of this kind of product? What is the value? If we go back to that benefit minus cost, that's how I think about perceived value is what do I get versus what do I give up? And so a lot of research oftentimes goes into pricing to figure out what are customers willing to pay for these amount of benefits. You know, what if these features matter more? What are they willing to pay for? And so as a marketer, we're going to be thinking about demand and at what price, like how does price affect demand, in other words. So if having a certain price level, how many consumers are going to be willing to buy? And sometimes that can be really hard to ascertain, but it is something that is studied and some general, laws of supply and demand operate, right? That said, beyond looking at perceived value, marketers do need to consider this price-revenue relationship. Because a lot of times, right, we see that things go on sale, but if you're going to engage in a price drop or a reduction in your price, you're assuming what? If you want to break even, you're assuming that the price drop is going to be offset by what? Volume. Because at the end of the day, there's two ways to make more money for your company. It's either to raise the price or to sell more, right? Okay, those are the two ways you can increase your total sales. And so if you as a company are considering dropping the price, in order to break even, you must sell more. And so here's a formula for that. And it is something that marketers need to consider. I think there was a good example in your book in that it talks about a company wants to sell 1,000 golf clubs at $1,000 each. Its gross margin is 50%. Okay, total cost, is $500. And they want to stimulate demand. So what are they going to do? They're going to give a $100 rebate on the purchase of these golf clubs. Now, we can talk about rebates later when we get to promotions. But if they have this 10% price cut, right, that means they're now selling them essentially at $900 each. But that 10% price cut actually leads to a 20% reduction in gross margin. And the question is, how many do they need to sell to make up the loss for that loss of gross margin? And so if you go back over here and you do the math, that means you're going to have a 25% increase in volume to still break even, okay? And the question is, do you think, as a marketer, you're going to be tasked with figuring out, do you think that $100 rebate is actually going to increase your volume by 25%? That can be tough to predict, okay? And so a lot of research goes into pricing. We're also going to be looking at, as a marketer, how do customers respond to price changes? Okay. Looking at price elasticity. In other words, how sensitive are consumers to price changes? And there's, a lot of research that goes into this with indications that sometimes customers are going to be more sensitive, and in other instances, they're not going to be as sensitive. Okay. So, for example, people are going to be more sensitive to prices when there's a higher availability of substitute products, right? When you can buy other things to satisfy your need, you might be more conscious of the price that you pay. and B, also more likely to switch to a cheaper option. Also, when you look at the total cost of something, the higher the total cost, usually the higher, you are, and the more sensitive you are to price changes. So for instance, I fall for these things too, right? Like when we needed to buy a new vehicle, we just decided we were done with my husband's truck. Ford was running their family and friends discount last April, and that was, in our view, a significant difference in the total price we paid. Because if you think about how expensive trucks are very expensive, folks. Like very expensive, in my view. And so that was, in our view, a great discount and as a result, a great time to buy. And it was noticeable. So noticeable means that it's a meaningful price difference. That you think that the price is actually meaningful. And by this, I mean, think about companies who are always running sales, right? When a company always runs a sale, it kind of dilutes your perception of what that true price really is, right? That, if the company is always running a sale, it triggers you to only buy when there's a sale, right? It's not really a meaningful difference in the price. And so a customer needs to perceive it as different. And also, people are going to be more price conscious when it's easier to engage in price comparisons. And I truly think with AI, it is making price comparisons so easy. Yes, the internet did as well, and with the bots and the shopping apps and all of that, it allows for easy price comparison, but I only think it's going to make our lives, make consumers more price conscious. Maybe I'm wrong, but I truly think with the increase in what we see with AI, I think people are going to be more price conscious and start to compare different or compare items sold at different retailers more. Now, when are people less price sensitive? One is when they perceive the products as a necessity, like they need to have it. And also when, I'm going to skip down to number 3, when they think that the product, when they think that its benefits essentially outweigh its cost, when they think that the product is truly unique, it's one of a kind, something doesn't make up for it, people are going to be less sensitive to prices. And I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, I was at St. Pete's Beach. Have you all ever been there? Well, you have, yeah. I was there in Florida for a conference, believe it or not. And I wrote down this in my notes because I was like, this was a great example of dynamic pricing. So what the company did, I thought I wrote it down, maybe not. The company or the conference hotel had a Starbucks in the center of the hotel. And I arrived, might have been on a Wednesday, and I was there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And each day that I was there, I went and got the same item at the Starbucks, and it was a latte. On Thursday, I paid somewhere between $7 and $8 for the latte. On Friday, guess how much I paid for the same latte? Neil was right, it was 9. How much did I pay for the same latte on Saturday? $11, okay? So, yeah. And but I was willing to pay it, right? Like, so they didn't have, Starbucks doesn't put its pricing out for people anymore. But to me, I was like, the coffee is a necessity. There's nowhere else, or I probably could walk outside the hotel and get coffee elsewhere for cheaper, but I would prefer Starbucks over an unknown brand or a coffee shop that I'm not familiar with. And so for me, the benefits, it was worth it, right? And the differentiation was there. I perceived Starbucks as different than even brewing coffee in my hotel room, okay? And also I'm a germaphobe and I don't know how clean those, yeah, he's shaking his head. He's there with me. Like, I don't know how clean those little K-Pod things or those Keurig machines that are in your hotel room really are, okay? But in my view, it was worth it. And you'll see, I think dynamic pricing, I mean, it happens a lot, folks. I think we don't really pay attention to it. I'll say, for instance, on spring break, did anybody go to the beach last week? Okay, so I left on Sunday, and so my mom and stepdad are snowbirds down in Orange Beach, Alabama. And so I brought my kids there, so I had childcare so I could work and respond to emails, and I worked at this wonderful coffee shop called Southern Grind. And I will say Southern Grind did not engage in dynamic pricing. I paid $7.60 each day I was there for the latte that I ordered. But that said, when I was there on Sunday, gas was $2.99, I think. And when I left on Thursday, anybody want to know what gas was?
$3.50.
How'd you know?
I just guessed.
Oh, you just are a lucky guesser today. So yeah, it was $3.50. Now, granted, I mean, the war, all that is affecting gas prices, yes. But as the beach is a vacation destination for spring breakers, it certainly makes sense that gas prices rise over spring break. But in this case, gas is, you can't go back home without it, so it's a perceived necessity, and I was willing to pay that versus try to find gas cheaper on my way home. I also just, when I'm on the road with my kids, I just want to get there as fast as I can. So we talked about those few. We didn't talk about complementary products. So sometimes you'll see that people are less price sensitive when they're buying products that are complementary. So, for example, I know someone in our group here just recently got married. Maybe they're planning a honeymoon. I'm not sure. That person isn't with us today, by the way. I see people looking around the room. But that said, right? Am I right? Yeah, I'm picking on him. Okay, so anyhow, if you're planning a honeymoon, let's say you might go to Sandals, a Sandals resort. And what might you do at your honeymoon? Are you going to just sit at your resort or might you adventure out? You might adventure out to different, have different excursions or maybe have some like premium experiences at a fine dining restaurant, certain upgrades. And so if you view these as products that complement each other, if your price of your hotel is on sale, let's just say, then you might be less price sensitive to the cost of the excursions or the cost of a fine dining experience. And so that's why a lot of times you'll see marketers will bundle or offer, a set of products or services at one specific price because it, to some extent, makes us less price sensitive. We feel like we're getting a better value by having all of these different services or products under one price. Okay. Now, also, there's going to be situational influences too that make us less sensitive to prices. For instance, like my kid once had something wrong with him, and I'm like, well, I don't know what's wrong. We're just going to go pay that $350 copay at the hospital because we want to figure it out. Turns out he had nursemaid's elbow. Do you guys know what that is? It's something like where something becomes out of alignment and so my sister-in-law, I don't want to get into too much detail here, folks, but my sister-in-law is a pediatrician. I called her and she's like, I think it's just nursemaid's elbow. And she's like, it just needs to be snapped back in. And so we were on vacation. My kids were younger then. He was probably like one-ish. My youngest was one-ish. And so we just knew something was wrong because he was crying. He wasn't sucking his thumb. Like he was a thumb sucker. We knew something was wrong. And so we brought him to the ER at the vacation destination we were at, and that ER person, I told that doctor numerous times, I think it might be nursemaid's elbow given what my sister-in-law says, and that doctor did an x-ray and said, no, something else is wrong, but we don't know what it is, but we don't think it's nursemaid's elbow. Well, we drive to Auburn the next day, go to the pediatric clinic, snap, yep, it was nursemaid's elbow, he's all good. Anyhow, very frustrated. But ER doctor, I'll say this, one learning lesson, I'll tell you this, because a lot of you might have kids someday, or maybe some of you already do have kids. ER doctors are likely not trained in pediatrics or have limited training in pediatrics. So I will always recommend going to a pediatrician over a generalist when it comes to childcare. So with that said, I was glad we got the problem solved, but to me, it's an example of it was a situational influence. Would I much rather just pay the $30 or $40 copay at seeing a pediatrician? Yes, over going to the hospital and paying a $350 copay. But at the time, it was urgent because we weren't in Auburn. We were in an area where we didn't know what to do. We didn't have a pediatrician to see. And so, we went to the ER. And so there's other situational influences like time crunch. Like maybe you're in a time crunch and you need to hurry up and buy something and make a decision because you don't have a whole lot of time to plan. Okay, stuff like that happens too. Okay, and that will reduce, your sensitivity to prices too. Oh, look at this. Should have mentioned this. Okay, so when I talk about people being sensitive to prices, I really do think technology and advances in technology have made some of us, particularly me, a little more price conscious. And so my birthday was March 7th and over spring break. And this wasn't this past year, but it was the year before. I really wanted chocolate martinis. Like I said, I haven't had a chocolate martini in so long. That's what I want for my birthday. Do you guys drink those or no? It's more like a dessert drink. It used to be something like years ago I used to drink with my friends. And so I was like, I'm getting myself martini glasses and we're having chocolate martinis on my birthday. So here you can see, I just Googled martini glasses and I found a design that I liked, okay? And I liked the gold rim. I thought that looked nice. And so I then Googled again, martini glasses with a gold rim. And look at this. So 8-ounce, 6-pack. Where does it show the brand? Oh, Shop All Stolsky, whatever. I can't say that brand name. Okay, but $125 at Target. And it was a 6-pack. And here with Wayfair, notice the same brand, same style, and I believe it was the same quantity. Does it say anything about quantity? And look at that price. I was so proud of myself, y'all. So $58.50 versus $125. Okay, I am very competitive in that way and felt like I walked away with a win. My first order from Wayfair, I felt like was a success. So anyhow, look at how easy this is to compare prices. And you can now ask, ChatGPT to find you the cheapest option of this particular brand or this model. And so I really am curious to see how this will all change shopping. But I'll tell you, I really am convinced that the easier we make it for consumers to become price conscious, especially with advances in technology, marketers are going to need to monitor and give their pricing a lot of thought. And the number one way to overcome price sensitivity of consumers is to make your product be perceived as different. Hence my willing to pay an increasing price for that Starbucks latte for the 3 days that I was there. Generally speaking, if customers perceive your product to be different and to have benefits that others can't match, they will be willing to pay. And so again, that goes all back down to product development and making sure that your product has a set of benefits that is unique and addresses a strong consumer want and a need. Companies have a general approach to pricing their products. Again, these are some base price strategies that they may use. Okay, so think of it as just a basic approach to setting prices. But again, prices will be fine-tuned on a case-by-case basis. Okay, companies certainly take a more individualized approach when they set a final price. So these are just some basic pricing strategies. One is price skimming. What that means is that companies are going to set their product's price high to help them recover research and development costs, marketing costs, all of the costs that kind of went into product development. And so they price the products high in the sense that they're going to have a strong gross margin that they can use to help recover their costs. So that's price skimming. So typically used in electronics, prescription drugs, things of that nature, that, you know, in those categories, they need to price high to help them recover those expenses. Price penetration is different. Does anyone know what price penetration is? It's the opposite. So you set your price low and your goal is to sell on volume. Okay, so the first one, price skimming, you sell on margin, or you make your money based on margin, you have a high gross margin. And the second one, you're selling on volume, meaning that you're going to price your products low in the sense that with a lower price point, you're going to penetrate the market faster, more people are going to be willing to buy, there's less hesitancy, and so you're going to make your money based on volume. It's ultimately it generally works well when the goal is market acceptance, where people are generally price sensitive. So going back to our price elasticity discussion. Freemium pricing. This is when companies give you a free trial on something with the hopes that you're going to actually follow through and subscribe after the free trial has ended. What companies come to mind here? Streaming services, certainly. Some meal companies out there, they might give you an initial discount, maybe not quite a free trial, but a significant discount. And so if they don't subscribe, then usually the company's out money because they can't recover those costs of the free service that they provided. But you do see this a lot. Even probably LinkedIn used to give free trials for its advanced subscription, or its different subscription models. So that's freemium pricing. Then you have prestige pricing. Again, pricing needs to look back at the product and the positioning of the product. What do you want customers to think of when they see your brand? And we also have talked about in this class when we talked about decision making. Price can confer or lead to certain customer inferences. And so prestige pricing is all about setting a price that the price conveys status or luxury, that it's prestigious. Okay, so you can probably think of some vehicle brands that might use prestige pricing, okay, to make it seem like it's truly luxury. It's a signal. It's using price as a way to promote an image of exclusivity and superior quality. Value-based pricing is similar in that it's going after value symbolism. It's not to symbolize exclusivity. It's to symbolize that, hey, this price is a good price given the value or given the benefits that are received. And so in this case, I would argue that Target tends to follow value-based pricing, as does IKEA, and other retailers out there. That at the end of the day, they're not offering or having the highest prices. They're not having the lowest prices, but their prices are somewhere in between such that the consumer does see value in that particular price point, meaning the benefits are worth, or the cost is worth the benefits received. Okay, given you're getting some high quality or a decent quality product. Competitive pricing or competitive matching. This is very common, I would say, with airlines or commodity-based markets or commoditized markets. So things where you see a very common price point, gasoline. But I will say this. As a marketer, you should always, if asked by a customer, match a competitor's price. So let's say that you're purchasing, what do you want to be purchasing today? It has to be somewhat expensive. Let's say $200 plus.
Espresso maker.
An espresso maker. I love it. Okay. So you got your new job. You're moving in to wherever you're moving, and you want this espresso maker. And you go to where are you shopping for this espresso maker?
Amazon.
Well, I was hoping it would be at, well, yeah.
Target.
I'm like, nope, Amazon's fine. You're doing Amazon. Okay. You see it at Amazon at one price, and you mentioned Target too, and you see it at a Target for, let's say, a slightly higher price than Amazon. Target's right here. You could go get it today, walk away, have it in your home today. But with Amazon, even if you have Prime, right, you have to wait probably 2 days. So let's say you go to Target and you're like, you know what, maybe I can convince them to price match. So you go over there, you go to their customer service and say, hey, I noticed you have this espresso maker and your price is this, but I can buy it on Amazon for that. You always should negotiate, folks. So you ask Target to match. Is Target going to match? Do you think Target's going to match Amazon's price? Some are saying no. Some might say yes. Truth is, I don't know. But Target should match the price, in my opinion, because if they don't, they lost that sale completely, right? Because you're going to order it from Amazon and save you however many dollars. But in my view, Target has not just lost him on that one purchase. By not matching, what signal is that sending to John?
They don't care about me.
They don't care about him. They don't care about his future purchases. They're too focused on the short term, right? So companies should always match prices because, again, we got to go back to that lifetime value of a customer. And if they don't match, he could write a nasty review online, share his experience with other people, and ultimately it comes down to, I would say, not only just customer lifetime value, but by not matching, what does that signal to the customer about the company's best interests? Okay? So, and on the other side, I want to tell you this, you always should negotiate. Don't be afraid, even in industries where you don't think negotiation is a thing, don't be afraid to ask. You never know. Okay, adjusting the base price. So again, these are just some strategies that companies often use to set some guidelines around where prices might fall. And then they might make adjustments to the price. Okay, so and again, products are going to be priced at an individual level. Okay, there is going to be fine tuning involved for each product or for each item sold largely. So discounting, these are simply sales. So you'll see sometimes that marketers will temporarily lower the price to stimulate sales. Reference pricing. This is a tactic largely used. It was used in that Wayfair example I showed you. And here's another example. Reference pricing is when you provide an initial anchor or an initial price that sets customers' expectations of what the price should be. And so, for instance, who else does this besides Wayfair? I have no, what are they called, Maxinistas or something? You guys don't go to TJ Maxx? Okay, I'm hearing some oh yeahs, okay. So TJ Maxx, right, they'll have their price and it'll say compared to, right? So some of you might be reading for your course project some of the psychological aspects that go into pricing. And so why this often works is we see this $5.29 and we think, whoa, that's a big price jump. It's worth the discount. And so we buy, right? So reference pricing is when you show an initial price and then have another price, the actual price of the item right next to it. And it works because of anchoring. That initial price is a reference or a guide that informs us of how great of a deal it really is. Price lining is when each competing product in a product line has a different sort of base price. So in other words, each model establishes a reference price for products in the group. So for instance, this week, so I am looking at buying a new vehicle sometime probably within the next year. I really don't want to, but I started my search. And I think I'm going to go with the Toyota, but I just drove a Hyundai Palisade this week. Have you guys seen those? Do you like them or no? I think they look sharp, and I'll tell you on the inside, I was really impressed. But I still am having a hard time overcoming kind of, I don't know, Toyota is just to me known for being very reputable and reliable. So I'm struggling here. But that said, I learned a lot about Hyundai this week. And so the Palisade has different models. They had I drove a Limit, I think it was an SEL Premium. So it had a 360 camera is the one thing that I want. And then it had heated seats in the front. I think it was heated and ventilated in the front and back row, or the middle row, I should say. But my main concern is I want that 360 camera. You got a lot of luxury features with a Hyundai compared to Toyota. I would say Hyundai at a lower price point, but I'm struggling. I might have to choose the Toyota for reliability. I don't know. Anyhow, so with that said, if you think about the different lines, so of the Palisade line, they have an SE, an SEL, I think an SEL Convenience, an SEL Premium, something else, and then I want to say a Calligraphy. And so of those different models, that's what price lining is, right? Each of those models has a distinct base price. Just like how when you buy an iPhone, the different model of an iPhone will have a distinct base price, right? So that's what price lining is. Odd pricing is when you see something like $4.97, or even some people would say like $5.99. Why companies set odd pricings, or why odd pricing sometimes encourages people to buy, can be explained for a variety of different reasons. One is, anybody want to take a stab at why a price like this might be more effective than saying $5?
Because you anchor on that first number.
You anchor on the 4, right? You read left to right. So some say that it's effective because people anchor on the 4, and it drives them to buy versus the 5. Some say that it works because when you have an odd number, it makes it seem like a lot of thought went into that price. Okay, so that a lot of effort was put forth into, what the cost of manufacturing would be and what a given markup is. Some, and relatedly, some say that a more precise number is more believable. So for example, if I were to tell you in an ad campaign against lung cancer, I were to tell you in an ad about 2 million people died last year as a result of lung cancer from smoking. Versus if I said 2,159,953 people died last year from lung cancer associated with smoking. A lot of research would believe that when I gave you that very precise number, it's more believable. It's more persuasive, it's more impactful, and it drives action. Okay? And so the same sort of theory can be applied to odd pricing in that, again, that number just seems more convincing and can be more impactful on consumer behavior. Price bundling, we talked about this already. It's where you take a product or an offering, for instance, like a vacation package. And so you have airfare, for example, airfare, hotel, and maybe an excursion bundled together for one set price. And the belief is that it's cheaper that way than if you bought those things separately. And then lastly, we have tiered pricing. Tiered pricing is where the price is set based on the features essentially that you receive. So like you have your basic LinkedIn, which is free, but if you have a LinkedIn Premium, you get more features and you pay a higher price point. And the same applies to other things, like if you have, for instance, a company that has like maybe a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum level. And so you get different benefits based on the price point of that particular level. So we'll end there for today. I wanted to end on a complete slide. We will see you on Wednesday and we'll finish this and start to pick up branding. Have a great rest of your cold Monday.
How is tiered pricing not gonna go?